What do you think the weirdest government job is? I personally think it's the White House press secretary, where we, the taxpayers, pay somebody to lie to us on behalf of the person that we elected, the President of the United States. And KJP is no different, especially when talking about the border. This is the most recent thing coming out of the White House, and it is hilarious and also horrifying. Watch this.
We need to do that. We need to continue to work together on border security, right? The president, first day in his administration, in a couple of weeks, we're going to hit 3 years since the president's been in administration. The first thing that he put forward was a comprehensive immigration law. And that's what he put forward to Congress. And that's because he believed that our system was broken and that it had been broken for decades and wanted to take that seriously. But we need Republicans in Congress to work with us on that. We appreciate the negotiations that's currently happening in the Senate. It's headed in the right direction. We want to come up with a bipartisan agreement, but we saw what the House passed ending of last year. They wanted to take away law enforcement folks who are at the border trying to protect our border. And so that's not what we want to see. We want to figure out how we work together. I just talked about the unity agenda. There's a lot of ways that we can work with Congress. Instead of them going after the president's family, they should really, truly, truly focus on the American family.
Okay, so because we pay and employ a person literally to lie to us, that is her job, we then have to decipher what's true and what's not, and whether or not we are being gaslit by KJP saying, look, we've been trying to work on the border the whole time, and the problem is Republicans. Okay, well, what does that actually look like? Gavin Newsom, when he debated Ron DeSantis, said a similar type of thing that made us have to go do some homework. The good news is we did that homework. Gavin said, well, Biden has proposed a thing that Republicans will not accept. Okay, why? Why will the Republicans in both the House and Senate not accept what the Biden administration is proposing? Well, this is from a press release specifically from the White House saying what their plan proposes to do. Now, there's a lot of stuff in here, but I think this specifically is very telling as to why nobody wants to do what the Biden administration is working so hard to reach across the aisle to do. This is from the Biden press release. The $4 billion in supplemental funding requests for DHS. It allocates $4 billion to DHS to address the immediate needs of the department to safely and humanely manage the southwest border and continue implementing our immigration laws through the expansion of lawful pathways and enforcing consequences to those who do not use them. What that says here focuses on really a key word. It doesn't say stop illegal immigration at the border. It says $4 billion will go to DHS to manage the southwest border crisis. Well, what does manage actually mean? I'll read on and then we'll talk about it a little bit more. The DHS has allocated more than $770 million to 69 partner organizations in fiscal year 2023 to support communities receiving migrants. Again, the verbiage there, very misleading, but we'll again review afterward. In both the Southwest Border region and the interior through the Shelter and Services Program and Emergency Food and Shelter Program, all of these humanitarian departments. So basically, what the Biden administration is proposing and what KJP is going on the news and saying, well, Republicans just don't want anything to do with this, is to not stop people at the border from coming in. No. It's to facilitate the process of the people who are coming here illegally and then claiming, quote unquote, asylum. Look, I don't necessarily know, I haven't thought super deeply about whether or not, what numbers there should be for asylum seekers and refugee seekers in this country. But everybody knows, including all of the people coming in, that the U.S. quote-unquote asylum laws are so broken and backwards, and the way the administration is enforcing them is a huge opening gap for people to come in. Whereas Trump had the Remain in Mexico policy, where people coming to the border had to stay in Mexico until their asylum hearing was heard, which honestly could be a very long time. We saw people not coming to the border because they didn't want to deal with that. Whereas now the Biden administration is letting people into the country under quote-unquote asylum claims and then setting a court date for 3 to 4 to 5 years down the road. This is what's actually happening. Now, KJP is going on the news and saying, well, we are working towards a solution, but Republicans don't want it. Well, the problem is the solution is not stopping any of it. The solution is let's process people quicker, and doesn't change whether or not you can make a false asylum claim. It doesn't expedite the process, which I think is the actual problem, getting bogged down in the courts, because people come into the country, they start their lives, they have kids, then 3 or 4 years later, they go in front of a judge and say, can I stay here? And if they have a kid because of the birthright citizenship thing, which is a whole different conversation that I think, well, we should do away with it, but I won't explain that here now. Because they now have a citizen in their household, that process is entirely screwed up. So the bottom line here is, when KJP comes out and says, well, the Biden administration is working, and these darn Republicans don't want to compromise or have any sort of a deal, well, compromise doesn't look like you getting everything that you want and us getting nothing. Yeah, compromise means you have a plan that everybody agrees on. And this particular quote-unquote plan doesn't actually do anything other than give more DHS funding to process, not to stop, and then allocate hundreds of millions of dollars to partner organization, the illegal immigration industrial complex is what we'll call this. Hundreds of millions of dollars to partner organizations, and I wonder where that money goes back to in political donations to aid and support the people coming across the border. That is why there is no bipartisan agreement on that. And that is why KJP is out on the TV trying to explain away the horrible situation at the border. We got one more clip from KJP where she's talking about the illegal immigrants getting bussed around. I've said this, I don't know, 100 times on this show already, that the busing illegal immigrants to quote-unquote sanctuary cities, which is a whole thing that we won't get into right now, I think it's the best, most effective political stunt ever performed. And here's KJP talking about that process and how bad it is. Watch this.
The busing of migrants, the putting them on flights, it is shameful that that is occurring. And instead of, if the governor really truly wants to deal with this issue, he should talk to the senators in his states.
See, here's what I think is funny about that. The wording around, well, it's shameful. It is shameful that those governors are sending people who want to seek sanctuary to places that claim to be sanctuary areas, whether that be states or cities. How dare they do that? And again, I understand that this is entirely political maneuver, but at the same time, isn't that what all of these states wanted? And from a political standpoint, if you are a state or city that is claiming we are a sanctuary, welcoming place for everyone, you don't get to have the political benefit of those words without actually doing what you say you're going to do. In other words, politicians in these areas shouldn't be allowed to enjoy the political uptick that they get for saying nice things when in actuality they won't want to or are not willing to do the things that they say they're going to do. I think it should be in full view of the voters in those states and cities that, hey, this is what our politicians said and we gave them credit for it, but now that it's happening, we don't like it and we should hold those politicians accountable. That is KJP's most recent screed, and again, the craziest thing about all of this is I think, and I'll say this again and again and again, that we pay somebody specifically to lie to us. That is their job. Why?